Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Tuesday, August 21st, 2018. Big podcast today with some breaking news that I'll go over after I do my baseball analysis from last night and look ahead to tonight's games. Go over a big injury and a key returnee of a contender. Then I'll go over the breaking news that just went down with a couple big trades and waiver claims. Then I'll talk about the preseason game from last night between the Colts and the Ravens. Then I will get into the Little League World Series a little bit. I'll do my picks for the WNBA first round playoff games for tonight. And I'll close the podcast by doing something fun, my NFL radio announcer rankings. All right, we'll go to baseball. Results from last night. Not everybody played because some teams were traveling, and some teams just had the day off. The Blue Jays defeated the Orioles 5-3 as they improved to 56-69. Baltimore drops to 37-88. Marco Estrada improves to 7-9. Andrew Cashner drops to 4-4. Ken Giles gets his 16th save of the season. Wonder if Toronto will ship any of their guys off since some of their guys have cleared waivers, such as Justin Smoke and Curtis Granderson. The Braves defeated the Pirates 1-0 as they improved to 69-55. Pittsburgh drops to 63-63. Bryce Wilson improves to 1-0. That was his first big league game. Chris Archer drops to 1-1. Dan Winkler gets his second save of the season. Wonder if Pittsburgh's going to put some of their guys on waivers because they, like the Nationals, are out of it. The Indians defeated the Red Sox 5-4. Huge win for the Indians. Statement win as they improved to 72-52. Boston drops to 88-38. Back-to-back home losses for the Red Sox for the first time in 2 months. Corey Kluber improves to 16-6. Rick Porcello drops to 15-6. Cody Allen gets his 25th save of the season. Give the Indians credit. They trailed 3-0. Corey Kluber had a rough first 2 innings. Home runs by Melky Cabrera, Michael Brantley, and Greg Allen, all in the game, all off of Rick Porcello. Red Sox make it interesting in the bottom of the 9th, but Cody Allen ultimately gets the job done. The White Sox defeated the Twins 8-5 as they improved to 47-77. The Twins dropped to 59-65. Lucas Giolito improves to 9-9. Stephen Gonsalves drops to 0-1 in his big league debut. The Giants defeated the Mets 2-1 in 13 innings. They improved to 62-64. The Mets dropped to 54-70. I'm sure some of these guys on both of these teams will be claimed off of waivers as well. Maybe Jose Bautista for the Mets, Andrew McCutchen for the Giants. Derek Law gets the win. He's 1-0. Tyler Batchelor drops to 0-2. Brandon Crawford's potential inning-ending pop-up in the 13th was dropped by Dominic Smith, who plowed into Ahmed Rosario, and that's how San Francisco got their run, and that's how they got their win. The Rays defeated the Royals 1-0, second straight shutout win for Tampa Bay. They improved to 64-61. Kansas City drops to 38-87. I wonder if anybody on these two teams will get claimed off of waivers. Ryan Yarbrough improves to 12-5. Jorge Lopez drops to 0-2. Jose Alvarado gets his 5th save of the season. The Brewers defeated the Reds 5-2 as they improved to 70-57. Cincinnati drops to 55-70. I'm curious to see if Matt Harvey gets claimed off of waivers, and I wonder if Milwaukee is going to address their starting pitching. Harvey and the Brewers would be a nice match. Chase Anderson improves to 8-7. Homer Bailey drops to 1-11. Jared Jeffries gets his 5th save of the season. The Athletics defeated the Rangers 9-0 as they improved to 75-50. Texas dropped to 56-71. Mike Fiers improves to 9-6. Bartolo Colon drops to 7-11. The Mariners defeated the Astros 7-4 as they improved to 72-54. The Astros dropped to 75-50. They're now tied with the A's for first in that division. I wonder if these two teams will make any pickups as they look to improve themselves for the stretch run. George Springer's still dealing with his injury. Jose Altuve's coming back tonight, I believe. Carlos Correa is still getting in the swing of things. So I'm curious to see if the Astros make a move, especially to improve their outfield depth, because Kyle Tucker has not looked like the prospect player that they thought he was going to be. And Jake Marisnick has been pretty much a 4A guy that's been up and down pretty much all season. And the big hit of this game, Robinson Cano hit his first home run since coming off the big suspension that gave the Mariners the 7-4 lead in the bottom of the 8th. And that home run came off of Colin McHugh, who's charged with the loss. He drops to 5-2 as Alex Colomb gets the win, improves to 4-5. Edwin Diaz gets his 48th save of the season. I think Edwin Diaz should be the favorite to win the Mariano Rivera Award, although Aroldis Chapman and Craig Kimbrell have had better seasons. The Cardinals defeated the Dodgers 5-3 as they improved to 69-57. The Dodgers dropped to 67-59. Brett Cecil improves to 1-1. Kenley Jansen drops to 0-4. Bud Norris gets his 25th save of the season. Big story of this game, Kenley Jansen back from the disabled list, but he gives up 2 home runs, one to Jed Jerko, then to Matt Carpenter. That I feel sorry for Jansen that he was back and did not look like himself. That's okay. It's only one bout outing, and one of those home runs is against the hottest hitter in baseball right now. That is Matt Carpenter. Tonight's games, Phillies-Nationals, big series there. Although the Nationals pretty much, I'll get into them in a second. Tanner Roark against Vince Velasquez. If I was about to say about the Nationals, so they pretty much have given up. I'll get into that in a second. Braves-Pirates, you have Kevin Gausman and Ivan Nova. Orioles-Blue Jays, Dylan Bundy and Sam Gaviglio. Indians-Red Sox, Shane Bieber, Nathan Eovaldi. Yankees-Marlins, Masahiro Tanaka, Pablo Lopez. The big story of this game is that Giancarlo Stanton is returning to Miami, sitting on 299 career home runs. It would be fitting for him to hit number 300 of his career in the city where his career began. Cubs-Tigers, Kyle Hendricks and Jordan Zimmerman. Giants-Mets, Chris Stratton and Steven Matz. Royals-Rays, Glenn Sparkman and Blake Snell. Reds-Brewers, Sal Romano and Junior Guerrera. Twins-White Sox, you have Jose Barrios, and making his big league debut, Michael Kopech. Kopech was one of the key pieces Chicago got back in the trade that sent Chris Sale to Boston. I think Kopech will be the best player that the White Sox would get in that package. Yohan Moncada's not lived up the hype ever since he's been in the big leagues. Even in that short period with the Red Sox, he hadn't lived up the hype. And he really hasn't lived up the hype with the White Sox either, although he is sitting on 16 homers on the season, which isn't terrible. But he's certainly not the player that the White Sox or folks around baseball thought he was going to be. Padres-Rockies at 8:40. Robbie Erlin and Tyler Anderson. 9:40 Angels-Diamondbacks. Felix Pena and Patrick Corbin. 10 o'clock ESPN Cardinals-Dodgers. Daniel Ponce de Leon and Heijun Ryu. Give me the Dodgers at home. Ryu's been pretty good since coming back for the Dodgers. And I believe that they're in desperate needs of a win. They need more wins now, and they're bigger. This is bigger for them than the Cardinals right now. As big as it is for the Cardinals, like I said, it's much bigger for LA and their home. So I like the Dodgers in a close one. I wouldn't say it will be high scoring. I think it will be closer to maybe a low scoring game, like a 4-3 game, and Kenley Jansen bounces back from last night. Let's go with that. Also at 10 o'clock, you have the Rangers and the Athletics. Ariel Gerardo and Brett Anderson. Last but not least, Astros-Mariners. Brad Peacock subbing in for Lance McCullers Jr., who's on the disabled list, against Mike Leake. All right, big injury in baseball. Didi Gregorius on the disabled list due to a bruised heel. It's undetermined how long he'll be out for. For the short term, they're just going to move Gleyber Torres over to shortstop, who's been hitting a little bit better of late after a prolonged slump. Since he was off the disabled list, he hadn't been the same for a month. He's shown signs of life against the Blue Jays over the weekend. And he'll play short. Second base will be a platoon between Neil Walker and Ronald Torreyes. And then right now, at least for the Miami series, they'll put Giancarlo Stanton back in the outfield, even though he's dealing with a hamstring injury. But they have to put him out there for a National League Series because they don't have the DH. So he'll be out there for at least 2 games, and once once the Yankees are out of Miami, he'll go back to DH, and they'll put Neil Walker back in the outfield for now, and then they'll put Torreyes at second base and Gleyber at short. And I think the Yankees have to go and get an outfielder before the August 31st deadline. There's some talk that Aaron Judge might not be back this season. If that's the case, the Yankees are not going anywhere, or they have to go out and get an outfielder if they want to do something. And if they know Aaron Judge is out for the season, they have to go out and get an outfielder. It may not be Bryce Harper, as he's staying put with the Nationals. Maybe Curtis Granderson could be that. Andrew McCutchen would be a nice fit. Maybe Austin Jackson or Jose Bautista. There's some other guys that I can come up with. Maybe somebody like Eddie Rosario if the Twins decide to move on from him. So it should be interesting to see what the Yanks do. Nicholas Castellanos, I think, would cost too much. And I mentioned Bryce Harper before. His team, the Washington Nationals, just traded away 2 pieces. Daniel Murphy to the Chicago Cubs for second base prospect Andrew Monasterio and cash or a player to be named later. What this trade tells me is that the Cubs are not confident that Chris Bryant may be back for the rest of the season. I just discussed Aaron Judge and the possibility he could be out for the rest of the season. This Murphy to the Cubs trade tells me that they don't think Chris Bryant will be back for the rest of the season. If that's the case, they'll put Javier Baez at third, Murphy at second, and they'll keep Addison Russell at shortstop. They'll put Ben Zobrist in the outfield with some sort of combination with Kyle Schwarber, Jason Hayward, Albert Almora, and then don't forget about Ian Happ. And secretly with this Cubs team is that Anthony Rizzo has not had the season that many had hoped. He's been hurt a lot this season. And maybe Murphy could play a little first base if they decide to give Anthony Rizzo a day off or something. But if Bryant comes back, you could put Chris Bryant in the outfield because he's very versatile like that. And you can put Jason Hayward on the bench, who's actually been pretty good this season. But let's be real, Jason Hayward's not the player that many thought he was going to be once he signed that big contract with the Cubs. And the other trade, Matt Adams was sent to the St. Louis Cardinals for cash considerations. That's a nice pickup for St. Louis. He can come off the bench and pinch hit for them. He can play a little first base. Now they have a surplus of players too, because Matt Adams can play in both the infield and the outfield. You can play him at first. You can play him at left field. And the Cardinals also have in their infield, who I think is the favorite for the National League MVP right now, which is Matt Carpenter. You also have Jose Martinez. You have Paul DeYoung. You have Colton Wong. You have Jed Jerko in that infield. So that infield's now crowded. And then Yaro Munoz coming off the bench too. And in the outfield for St. Louis now you have Harrison Bader, Tyler O'Neill. Dexter Fowler hasn't played that much. And they traded away Tommy Pham, which I thought was a questionable move at the time. He's hitting pretty well with the Rays as of right now, and I think he'll prove to be a good pickup for Tampa as well. So the Cardinals have a crowded roster right now. Although right now mostly everybody's producing in that lineup, courtesy of Matt Carpenter. You have to give him mostly all the credit for that. And then their rotation's phenomenal. I think they can make additions to their bullpen to improve themselves too. Although their bullpen's actually been pretty solid these last couple weeks during their resurgence. But I would have liked to see them go out and get maybe a Kelvin Herrera, because I'm not confident in Bud Norris and all the other guys they have in that pen. I think they can use an upgrade there. Their rotation, I think, is secretly the strength of their team, although they just moved Carlos Martinez to the bullpen. Maybe that could be the asset they have in their bullpen down the stretch. He could really be a weapon there. And in the rotation, they have Miles Mikolas, who's had a career year. I thought he was a candidate to be claimed by somebody off of waivers, but not anymore because the Cardinals are back in the pennant race. And who knows what the status of Michael Wacha and Adam Wainwright are. If those two guys can get healthy, that would be a big plus for them in their rotation. John Gantz pitched some good innings for them. Daniel Ponce de Leon's been solid. Jack Flaherty's been pretty good. And you also have Luke Weaver in that rotation too, and he has some upside as well. So keep an eye out for the St. Louis Cardinals. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I wouldn't be shocked if they end up making a run in October and end up in the World Series perhaps. Could you imagine 2013 World Series rematch right now? And both of those teams are entirely different. The only people left from that Red Sox team that won in 13 are Xander Bogaerts and Dustin Pedroia, and Pedroia hasn't really played much this season. And Mookie Betts wasn't even on the team yet, and neither was Rafael Devers or J.D. Martinez, obviously, or Andrew Benintendi. Jackie Bradley Jr. was a bench player on the team that won the World Series in 2013. And then on that Cardinals team, they mostly have the same roster with a few exceptions. Alan Craig was a big part of that 2013 team. He's no longer in the big leagues. Carlos Beltran was on that 2013 team, but he was only on the Cardinals for 2 seasons. And then he ended up signing with the Yankees after that season. Adam Wainwright was in his prime. Michael Wacha was pitching his best baseball of his life at that time. So their rotation was obviously different. Lance Lynn was still on the Cardinals. So was Shelby Miller. That Cardinals team was very good too. So the Cardinals, and Matt Carpenter was obviously on the 2013 team as well. Colton Wong, I mentioned, he made the big mistake, and I believe it was Game 4 in that World Series. I think that was the biggest moment of that series, or else who knows, maybe the Cardinals win that series over the Red Sox if it weren't for that big pickoff when Carlos Beltran had 2 men on base with 2 outs, and then Wong gets picked off on first base by Mike Napoli, and Koji Uehara was the Red Sox closer at the time too. So that was that. So that'd be funny if it was a Cardinals-Red Sox World Series. I wonder what the money would be on that right now. And so I'm interested to see if the Nationals trade anybody else. Looks like Harper's staying. Maybe Herrera goes. I don't think Scherzer will go. Maybe Gio Gonzalez goes. He's in a contract year. He'll help somebody. Maybe the Brewers. So just keep an eye on the Nationals and see who else they move. And I obviously will talk about waiver claims as the weeks and days goes on. The waiver deadline is 10 more days away. Let's stick with baseball, but let's go to the Little League World Series. We have some big games coming up tomorrow night. In the USA bracket, you have Honolulu, Hawaii out of the West region against Staten Island, New York in the Mid-Atlantic region. And as well as Grosse Pointe Woods, Michigan out of the Great Lakes region against Peachtree City, Georgia in the Southeast region. And in the international bracket, you have South Korea and Japan and Puerto Rico and Canada. And I'll get more into the Little League World Series on tomorrow's podcast. And I'll actually pick the 4 games on tomorrow's podcast, the 4 big games that could end up in the International Championship and the USA Championship, respectively. Preseason football last night. You had the Colts and the Ravens. Fun game. A lot of storylines. The Ravens won it 20-19. The Colts had a chance to go for 2 and the win, and the Ravens defense stopped it. Joe Flacco looked pretty solid, 7 for 9, 72 yards and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson, 7 for 15, 49 yards and a touchdown. Robert Griffin III, 6 for 8, 31 yards. Andrew Luck struggled, 6 for 13, 50 yards and an interception. Jacoby Brissett looked pretty solid. He'll be their backup this year. 14 for 23, 172 yards. And week 3, the preseason, will start on Thursday with the Eagles and the Browns. That game will be aired on Fox. Should be Joe Buck and Troy Aikman on the call. And then Friday, August 24th, you have the Giants and the Jets. Curious to see if Odell Beckham Jr. and Saquon Barkley play in that game. If I had to guess, maybe Odell. But my question is, would Odell play without his contract being signed? The Giants have to get that extension done before the season. And you also have the Broncos and the Redskins. Chad Kelly's looked solid for Denver in this preseason. I wonder if he'll end up being their starter. And boy, did John Elway whiff on Paxton Lynch. And then with the Redskins, who just signed Adrian Peterson, I discussed that on yesterday's podcast. He wasn't a good fit in New Orleans last year, and then they traded him to Arizona. He actually had some moments on the Cardinals last year. And then you have the Patriots and the Panthers. I wonder if Tom Brady will play. He played in the first 2 preseason games, and he really looked like himself in that second preseason game against the Eagles, I believe it was. You have the Lions and the Buccaneers, 8 o'clock on CBS. I'm assuming that game will be called by Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. Sometimes Ian Eagle would call preseason games on CBS, but I believe he will be calling the Giants-Jets game because he calls the Jet preseason games. And then since it's Giants-Jets, that game is a Jet home game, so that'll be aired on CBS 2 in New York, and I believe Ian Eagle will have the call for that game. And usually when the Giants are home, the game's aired on NBC, and Bob Papa would have the call if it was a Giant home game against the Jets in the preseason. So yeah, Lions-Buccaneers storylines there. Jameis Winston looked good in his last preseason game. Like I said, he's suspended to start the season. Ryan Fitzpatrick has been okay in the preseason. Matthew Stafford's had some moments early in the preseason. Kerryon Johnson looks like he'll make the team. Also, on Friday night, you have the Seahawks and the Vikings. Kirk Cousins, 1 good game, 1 bad game. Russell Wilson's looked good in the preseason. And 10:30 on NFL Network, you have the Packers and the Raiders. Aaron Rodgers will probably play solo Derek Carr. Usually week 3, the preseason is every team's quote-unquote dress rehearsal. But if I'm a team like the Giants, who have somewhat issues with their star players, Saquon Barkley, it's the hamstring injury, and Odell Beckham Jr. is the contract and his recovery from injury. Maybe you sit those guys, but if you're the Giants, you have to play Eli Manning, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, and your other core players. And then Saturday, the 25th, you have the Chiefs and the Bears, 1 o'clock on NFL Network. Mitch Trubisky up and down in the preseason. Same for Patrick Mahomes, but Mahomes has looked a little better than Trubisky so far. Titans, Steelers, 4 o'clock on NFL Network. Marcus Mariota's looked okay. Ben Roethlisberger didn't play in their recent game due to a concussion when he'll play on Saturday. Also 4 o'clock on Saturday is the Texans and the Rams. Deshaun Watson's looked good in the preseason. And Jared Goff, I don't think has seen preseason action yet. 4:30 Saturdays, 49ers, Colts, Jimmy Garoppolo. has looked solid in the preseason. Andrew Luck struggled last night. When they're full bounce back, I'm sure he will eventually. Falcons, Jaguars, Saturday at 7 o'clock. Blake Bortles has been Matt Ryan's been up and down. But like I said, it's just the preseason, so I can't judge him. Ravens, Dolphins, Saturday on the 25th at 7 o'clock as well. Flacco's looked sharp. Lamar Jackson's been inconsistent. Ryan Tannehill's looked okay, coming off that injury. And Saturday, 8 o'clock, CBS, Saints, Chargers. This will either be Ian Eagle and Phil Simms. Oh, wait, Phil Simms isn't even in the booth anymore. Probably Ian Eagle and Trent Green or Nance and Romo. So Drew Brees, I don't think has played yet in the preseason. Wonder if he'll go in dress rehearsal weekend. Phillip Rivers has looked okay. Geno Smith looks solid as he's probably in the lead for the Chargers' backup job. And Tom Savage, I believe, is in the favorite spot to get the Saints' backup job. Sunday, August 26th, 4 o'clock on Fox, you have the Bengals and the Bills. Josh Allen getting the start. This is either going to be Joe Buck and Troy Aikman or Kevin Burkhardt and Charles Davis on the call. Probably Burkhardt and Davis, and then they'll have Buck and Aikman do Eagles, Browns. And Cardinals, Cowboys, Sunday night in primetime on NBC. That'll be Al Michaels, Chris Collinsworth, or Mike Tirico and Collinsworth. Dak Prescott's looked sharp in the preseason so far. Josh Rosen inconsistent. Sam Bradford's looked okay. Glennon's looked meh. So the Cardinals quarterback competition is the intrigue of that preseason dress rehearsal game. Next, I want to get into the WNBA playoffs, which begin tonight. There are 2 games. First up tonight, 8-seeded Dallas Wings against the 5-seeded Phoenix Mercury. The Wings are 15-19 on the season. Mercury 20-14. I believe this is going to be a fun game. Skylar Diggins-Smith and Liz Cambage are the 2 best players on the Wings. The Mercury have a bunch of all-stars. Brittany Griner, Diana Taurasi, DeWanna Bonner. The Wings have been dealing with some turmoil. Their coach recently got fired due to an altercation with the team owner. I just think the Mercury are the better team. They have 3 all-stars, and I think they'll prevail at home. So give me the Mercury to advance to the second round to take on the Connecticut Sun. And the second game tonight is a game that if you told me this game would have taken place before the season started, I would have been dumbfounded, but here we are. 7-seeded Minnesota Lynx, 18-16 on the season against the 6-seeded Los Angeles Sparks, 19-15 on the season, 10:30 ESPN2. I believe this will be Ryan Ruocco and Rebecca Lobo on the call. This is what everybody predicted would be the finals going into the season. This was the finals last year, but now we have the finals rematch in the first round single elimination playoff game. That is probably the most dumbfounding thing perhaps in the WNBA this season. That's absolutely crazy. Star power abound. Maya Moore, Sylvia Fultz, Simone Augustus, and on the other side you have Candace Parker, Nneka Ogwumike, Chelsea Gray. I think this is going to be a very close game. I won't be shocked if it's tied in the final minute. Won't be shocked if there's overtime. This is obviously the most compelling game of the night. I think the winner of this game could potentially go to the WNBA Finals and, dare I say, win it. They're 2 talented teams. Injuries ravaged both of these teams, and that's a big reason why these teams are 7th and 6th this season, but that's the WNBA this season. Some other teams have had some good seasons, such as the Seattle Storm, who are the 1 seed. The Atlanta Dream have had a good season. They're the 2 seed. And my pick for this game is the Los Angeles Sparks. I just think home court advantage at the Staples Center, and they'll get the win. So give me the Sparks, and it'd be disappointing finish for the Lynx in that case, and Lindsay Whalen, there's some speculation that she's going to retire at the end of the season, so this could be her final WNBA game. So give me the Sparks to advance on to the next round to take on the Washington Mystics and Elena Deladon. The second round single elimination games will take place on Thursday. I'll pick those games on Thursday's podcast. Last, I'm going to do my NFL radio announcers rankings. This should be fun. And I hope I don't insult anybody if I rank somebody too low or too high. But this is just my opinion based on how enthusiastic these announcers have shown and whether they're clearly homers or not and whether how neutral they are. So, without further ado, let's go 32-1 as I usually do. 32, let's go with Zach Strief of the Saints. He's a first-year announcer, as well as number 31 on this list, Matt Taylor. Both of the Colts and the Saints have new radio announcers after their respective ones have retired. Number 30, Dan Miller of the Lions. I've seen him show a little homerism in his calls. I remember the Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary in Detroit a few years ago. He obviously wasn't thrilled and was saying, "Are you kidding me?" So there's a little homerism there. Number 29, this is probably too low, but Gene Deckerhoff of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that's low for a guy as great as he has. He's been around for a long time, and he's called some Super Bowls, and he's still around. God bless him. Number 28 is Mick Mixon of the Panthers. He's a pretty good announcer too, but I've seen him show a little homerism in his calls. He obviously seemed a little disgusted when the Panthers had their 15-1 season and lost in the Super Bowl to Denver. 27 is John Murphy of the Bills. He's been around a long time, called the Bills for many years. Had that long playoff drought that finally ended last year. 26, Jimmy Cefalo of the Dolphins, somebody who has his own radio show down in Miami. He's been the Dolphins announcer for a while. I've seen a little homerism in him too, and being kind of upset when the Dolphins want to do well. 25 is Dan Howard of the Cincinnati Bengals. He's pretty good, but I've seen him be against other teams and not be neutral as well. 24 is Mark Vandermeer of the Texans. He's pretty solid. He just isn't that enthusiastic as the other guys on this list. 23 is Larry Michael of the Redskins. He's okay. I just think he's a little bit of a homer. 22 is Gary Sandusky of the Ravens. Somebody who I think is solid, but hasn't shown that much enthusiasm either. 21 is J.B. Long of the Rams. He's only been doing this for 2 years. He's done a nice job. He's called some big moments for the Rams last year. 20 is Matt Money Smith of the Chargers. He's a bit of a homer. 19, Frank Frangie of the Jaguars. He's a little bit of a homer too. 18, Wes Durham of the Falcons. I think he did a nice job calling the Super Bowl run for the Falcons a few years back. But in the Super Bowl, he seemed a little down after the Falcons blew that 28-3 lead. But he's a good announcer. All these guys are solid announcers, but this is just my opinion, as I said. 17, Jim Donovan of the Browns. He's been around for a long time and has called some of the happier Browns moments that there really hasn't been happy Browns moments, but he can get excited when the Browns do something good. 16, Jeff Joniak of the Bears. He's a good announcer, and he's called some playoff runs before. He did a nice job in the Super Bowl when they played the Colts. Now we're getting up to the upper echelon guys. 15, Ted Robinson, 49ers. He's pretty solid. I remember he had a great call when Alex Smith threw the game-winning touchdown pass to Vernon Davis in the 2011 division game against New Orleans. 14, Bob Wisuzin of the Jets. He's a very good announcer. He's very neutral. He's enthusiastic. But like I said, this is a hard rankings list to do because all these guys are great at what they do. But Wisuzin's very good at his job. Sometimes he can be critical of the Jets when he has to be. But hey, that's not the worst thing in the world. 13 is his coworker from ESPN, and that's Dave Pasch of the Arizona Cardinals. Pasch is very good at what he does, too. He showed great enthusiasm when the Cardinals made the Super Bowl back in 2009. And that was the 2008 season, though. 12 is Pasch and Wisuzin's former colleague at ESPN. That's Brent Musburger, who's now the radio announcer of the Oakland Raiders. I had him pretty high on this list because he's Brent Musburger, and he's a pretty darn good announcer. This is his first season being the Raiders radio announcer. He replaces Greg Papa, who I think did a great job for many years with the Raiders. Number 11 is Bill Hillgrove of the Steelers. He's really good at what he does. Has called multiple Super Bowls in his life. 10, Mitch Holthus of the Chiefs. He's pretty good at his job too. I've seen him show a little bit of homerism in his career as well. He gets excited when the Chiefs do something good. But like I said, he can be a little bit of a homer sometimes, but he's a great announcer, and that's why he deserves this ranking. 9, Bob Sachi of the Patriots has called many, many Super Bowls in his life. Although his radio partner is a big homer, I think Sachi does a great job at what he does. He shows enthusiasm. He's shown neutrality, like a couple of the other guys I listed, like Wisusin and Pasch, and even Musburger and Hillgrove. 8 is Dave Logan of the Broncos. I think he's great at what he does. 7 is Mike Keith of the Tennessee Titans. He's known for that touchdown Titans. But yeah, I believe he's great at what he does. 6 is Merrill Reese of the Eagles. He's excellent at what he does. He's very neutral. I think he did a great job in the Super Bowl last year. 5, Steve Rabel of the Seahawks. He's shown great enthusiasm. One of my favorite calls from him was when Richard Sherman made the interception off of Colin Kaepernick in the NFC title game in the 2013 season. He did a great job in the Super Bowl that year too, Super Bowl 48, calling that pick 6 by Malcolm Smith and that kick return for touchdown by Percy Harvin. 4, Wayne Lavery of the Green Bay Packers. He's done a great job through the years as well. 3, Paul Allen of the Vikings. His call in the Minneapolis Miracle in the division round last year is just tremendous, although I believe his partner is a bit of a homer. And these next 2 guys are debatable, which I should say everybody on this list is debatable, especially the top 30 because the 31 and 32 are rookies. But these 2 guys really stuck out to me. Number 2 is Brad Sham of the Dallas Cowboys. He's very neutral, and he's a great announcer. He's very good at what he does. And I think his partner is very good as well. Number 1 is Bob Papa of the New York Football Giants. I think he's the best radio announcer in the sport. He's very neutral. Yes, he was excited when the Giants won those 2 Super Bowls, but that's okay. You're allowed to be excited for a moment like that. But Papa's so great. He's very neutral, and he can get excited for any big moment, whether it's the Giants or somebody else. He used to call games on NFL Network about 8-9 years ago. And I remember Brad Smith had a big punt return for touchdown against the Bengals. He was at the Jets at the time, and he showed a lot of enthusiasm. I remember he called a game-winning touchdown pass that Tony Romo threw on Christmas night on an NFL Network game a few years back. But Papa is just an excellent announcer. Maybe his TV experience maybe factors into this number 1 ranking and showing that he can get excited for moments pretty much all the time. But like I said, all due respect to everybody, I believe that Papa's the best in the business in terms of NFL radio announcers. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing NFL TV announcers. And I'm going to rank all the guys. It's going to be a mixture of Fox, CBS, ESPN, and NBC guys on the list. And also tomorrow I'll be recapping all the baseball games for tonight. Looking at tomorrow's games, I'll get into Little League World Series and pick the 4 big games for tomorrow. And I'll recap the WNBA playoff games and go over anything else that happens in the world of sports. I hope you guys have a great day, everybody.